you probably all heard this idea that you should be practicing music that's kind of at your level or maybe a little bit higher in order to keep progressing. Because obviously if you're trying to play something that is way too difficult for where you are, you kind of feel like you're hitting your head against the wall. And on the other hand, if you're just learning, music that is well within your capability, well, then you're not really growing much as a result of it. And so I wanted to kind of clarify that and suggest the idea that it's not like you should do either or. There's kind of a certain amount of practice that you should be working on your base, building momentum, playing stuff that's well within your grasp, and solidifying that, and breaking new ground at the same time. Breaking new ground. Now, if all you ever do is work on your base, well, you're not really going to progress much, but you're going to be, solid in what you do, right? On the other hand, if all you do is try to break new ground, you're just trying to play faster all the time, you're not going to get much of the base. You're not going to get enough momentum. So that's the idea of what I've tried to do in these methods is spread that out so that you have music, but you have challenge at the same time. And so the reason I say all that is because what I want to encourage you guys to do is not just look at the stuff that's in the level 6 video stuff, because there's stuff I'm putting up in level 4 that is totally appropriate, could go right here. It's going to be some pretty advanced stuff, and it builds, maybe it's well within your capability, but you still need, to build that base. So I would encourage you to look at it. So what I would say is that on the one hand, you really want this spread of materials, and the first category, I guess I would say, of what you should learn for practice routine stuff is it should be something that you find interesting or inspiring. Because if it's not, it doesn't matter whether it's building your base or breaking new ground. If you're not really inspired by it, you're not going to get a whole lot of mileage out of it. So if there's a couple videos you look over and you watch it and you think, that's really cool, go ahead and work on it. Even if it's building base, it's good to do. If it's something that's like, I'm not really terribly interested in it, you can probably skip it. It's not going to create a big hole in your playing. But even stuff all the way down like level 3, I just did the 6th solo, chapter 6 out of Metal Lead Guitar, and I haven't played any of that stuff for probably 30 years. Okay, so I have to learn it, and I spend an hour or more actually playing and kind of getting that bass back. Because here's the thing, a lot of that stuff you guys have been through. I presume you've been through some of it, and there's a big difference between playing it well and just playing the notes. So if you go through like Metal Lead Guitar and you're going through a couple solos and you go, okay, I learned that years ago and I played the notes. What I want to encourage you to do is say, hey, you know what? You can play it a lot better. There's a world of difference between playing the notes and actually making all the bends and making the phrases work and playing with precision. I mean, I can learn the song and play it in 5 minutes, but I'm not playing it well. It takes me an hour or two to really make it mine musically and play from that deeper place of certainty and precision, which is what makes it really sound good. So the question is, at whatever level you are, that's the level you can bring an example to, even all the way back to the rhythm guitar stuff. Kevin, I know you're working in some of that stuff, and as we explore it deeper, playing a groove really well is a world apart from just playing the notes, and so wherever you are, I guess, you guys have access to a lot of material, and you got to kind of figure out, well, where should I be spreading my time out? So I want to suggest this idea of kind of think in terms of some of it's working on my bass and momentum and groove, and some of it's going to be breaking new ground, and kind of try to spread that out and do some of both, always making sure that the stuff that you're learning is stuff that, that's inspiring, because that's the bottom line. So anyway, that's what I wanted to start with. If let's go ahead and go through. If you guys have any follow-up questions about anything I said, if that makes sense to you or doesn't make sense to you, we can talk about that more. Or if you got something completely different you want to talk about, that's cool too. So, Kevin, you came in first, so it's to you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't have really any questions on that. That makes sense. It's kind of what I'm actually trying to do. I try and do some of that anyway, and that's why I've got the metal rhythm stuff. But I figure making videos is takes some time, so that's why I'm doing those, because that's the base.
Right.
And yeah,
totally.
Definitely some fine tuning that we're working on. So now I've got just a question to kind of go on with gear, but we can do that later. I strained my elbow, so I've kind of been out for a couple of weeks too. So I'll be getting back here pretty quick. It's just about good again.
Good enough. Yeah, whenever somebody has a tendon issue or a strain issue, and sometimes that's obviously not related to guitar playing, but it'll affect guitar playing. And sometimes it's actually guitar playing that causes the problem. I always want to remind people, and it sounds like you know this, but for everybody else, when that happens, continuing to push yourself when you have an injury is probably a really bad idea. You can get away with it a little bit when you're younger. When you're older, you have to be even more careful. But generally speaking, it makes a lot more sense to make sure that you give yourself time to heal. And whatever you lose, you get a little rusty because you haven't played for a couple of weeks. Well, I'm here to tell you it always comes back, because I have done that probably 100 times, where I've gone and I don't play for a month or 2 months, or sometimes it was actually 6 months, 9 months. There's times I went almost a year and didn't touch a guitar, which I don't recommend. But I can tell you that it always comes back, and you have to work at it. But when it comes back, it's kind of like a telescoped version of learning the first time. The skills are there, but you do have to be patient enough to go ahead and go back and say, okay, today I'm just going to take it easy, and I'm just going to do bass stuff, work on that a while, and until you start feeling the precision come back. And sometimes it will take me a couple days at the least, and sometimes it would take weeks. If I was out for 9 months, it would maybe even take a month for me to get playing back. So, but it does come back, and the beauty of it is that every time that happens, there's actually a gain, because you get to see your technique kind of anew. And when that happens, you can make adjustments instead of necessarily just being kind of locked into the one way that you've played. And that's kind of helped me in some respects. So it's not all bad. Okay. Anything else about, you said you had a question about gear.
Oh, well, yeah, because we were talking about string gauge last time, and
Right.
I was thinking maybe we cover pick tips and pick thicknesses, because I've been actually experimenting now. Well, not experimenting. When I've been practicing, I've been practicing with slightly different gauges. I'm going anywhere between, about 75.75 to 1 millimeter.
Yeah.
But with also different tips and flexibilities, just to try and, get my hand working well no matter what, like you were talking about, if
Right.
you happen to be somewhere and you forgot your pick or whatever and somebody has something, you still want to be able to play pretty well. So I wanted to get some feedback on you on different pick thicknesses and tips and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean the actual tip of the pick.
Yeah, yeah. There's a sharp point, and then there's the rounded tip, which is the classic pick shape. I used the normal pick shape for many years. That's what I recorded all that speed mechanics stuff with, and through the '90s. I never liked the jazz picks, which have the sharp tip, not because of the tip, but because of the shape. I just got used to holding a bigger pick, and it felt like it was easier to manipulate. And so a couple things. Here's my experience with it. When I finally did try the sharp tip pick, I was using Dunlops because, of course, they wear a lot better than the original materials. And I was using the blue Dunlops 1 millimeter. And well, by the way, let's talk about the thickness first because that just came up. 1 millimeter pick doesn't flex much at all, but that's a function of the string gauge. If you're using heavier strings, then a 1 millimeter actually could flex a little bit. It will if you hold it tight and pull it. You can see that you can make it flex a little, but on like 9 gauge strings, pretty much no real flexing going on. And what that means is that you're in control of where the tip of the pick is. When the pick flexes a lot, you're not in control of that. You have to sort of allow for that amount of slop. And that's fine if you're doing strumming because you don't need the accuracy. But when you go to play lead stuff, you start needing to be in great deal of control over where the tip of the pick is specifically. And if you think about it, if the string's vibrating and the pick is flexing, you've got two separate motions, and it's very difficult to control with any precision what's really going on. You need wider pick travel, for example, to deal with that. So as we play faster, we're reducing pick travel, so you need to go to a thicker pick. What the thicker pick does, as you get less flexing, you get more control, but you also have to learn how to hold the pick more lightly so that you can allow it to move in your hand. Now, that allows you to control where the tip is, so you can tighten up on it when you want to. You can stay a little looser on it when you want to. So you have more control. But there's a drawback. That control comes at a price, and the price is learning how to control it. So it's a learning curve to get control of the thicker pick. I always go back to this this metaphor because it kind of makes sense to me. I guess because, well, I had a background in racing. I was racing cycling in my family, but my dad also raced sports cars, and so I have some knowledge a little bit about auto racing. And if you can imagine, driving a street car that's designed to be super easy to drive, smooth. Well, part of the reason it's smooth is because it doesn't have a lot of power. Okay, so it's easy to learn how to drive like a Honda Accord, right? But if you're trying to drive a 600 horsepower Lamborghini or a race car, a 1200 horsepower, whatever, it's a very different experience because you have to learn a technique to be able to handle that. And so there's a learning curve. But once you get it, you can go a whole lot faster and have a whole lot more control with the race car, obviously. So it's the same thing with the pick. Beginner uses a thin pick. It's easy to do. But to get to the higher levels, you got to get up to thicker picks. Now you have to learn how to manipulate that pick and hold it. So that story is true for pick thickness. It's also true for pick tip in my experience. So when I switched to a sharp tip pick, at first it was like, oh, it's a little harder because it would catch differently. The rounded tip would slide across the strings a little easier. But I noticed right away that the picks that were there, like if I was on one string and I was at the right point on a sharp tip pick, it had better clarity and it had better articulation. So I practiced with it a little bit, and very quickly I came to see that it's kind of the same thing as the thickness. It means it takes a little more learning curve, but once you get it, you have better articulation. At least that's how I felt using the sharp tipped pick. So then I never went back. I'm like, okay, I want the sharp tipped pick. It's harder because you have even less margin for error, because now you have to be more on the tip of the pick, and there's less slipping going on. So that's the story of the sharp tip. And then the third part of the story is that I'm using these blue sharp tip picks, full size picks, for a long time. And I think, yeah, I like these. Well, I also had jazz picks around, and I still never liked them because I couldn't really hold them. It changes the feel of the pick in your hand. And until one day when I ran out of my picks, and the only sharp tip pick I had was a jazz pick, and too lazy to go to the guitar store. So I just started playing with it. And lo and behold, after like a day, it started to feel normal. And I started using them, and it was like, okay, this works just fine. A couple of weeks later, I went back and grabbed a normal one, and it felt clunky and too big. Now I go back and forth between them, but I came to realize that that's just a matter of preference of what you get used to. So I don't think that there's any real significant difference between the sizes of the picks, in terms of their shape or whatever. But again, pick thickness, I would encourage, you're on 9-gauge strings. I would say at least that 0.75 as a minimum, and probably more, 0.88 maybe might be a better minimum, or 1 millimeter. Some people go thicker. I don't see the need of going thicker than 1 millimeter. And I don't think it'll hurt anything. I mean, there's a point at which the pick thickness might even affect travel, because the thicker the pick is, you have to clear the string as you play super fast. But you can do it. I just don't see any need to go thicker than 1 millimeter unless you're using heavier gauge strings, which would, when you dig in, would cause the pick to flex a little bit. So you might go a little bit bigger. 1.14, I guess, is the next step. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, or maybe 10 cents, talking a lot, but pick thickness. Does that make sense? You got any thoughts about that? Question?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. In general, I favor right around 1, and I also use the Jazz, but 3s, but I use the Jazz 3 extra large because I couldn't, like you're talking about, get used to the smaller size, even though Petrucci, I was a big fan, and he was like, oh yeah, and I was like, I tried them, and it just felt too weird. So I got the XLs, but I also use the Dunlop, sharp tips.
Right.
And like I said, I've been going between 0.75 and 1. I tend to favor the ones more. And the thing about those versus the rounded tips, the normal ones, I try those just once in a while, is that I've got better control with the sharper tips.
Yeah. That's
I've got better
what
tone control. It doesn't
Right.
catch as much.
Yeah. After you get used to that sharp tip, I don't think it catches as much, but at first it might catch more. So that could turn people away from it, but you kind of have to stick with it, and then you get there. Here's this is the blue sharp tip that I typically use, and then I got these. It's a different color, so it's a different material, and I think it sounds a little bit different. It feels different, as far as this one's a little more slippery. So this one. So I kind of like these actually a little bit better. And then of course the Jazz 3 is this guy, that little one. But this one I think is the one you're talking about. The shape. Put it up here where you can see it. It's somewhere in between, and as far as the size. And so I use this sometimes too. But the other thing I'm probably guilty of with pick stuff is continuing to use the same old pick for too long before I grab a new one. You know, I throw it on the table and I pick it up and I don't necessarily look at it. And then one day I'll be noticing my picking hand doesn't feel comfortable. What's going on? And then I look at the thing and it's all, I don't know if you can see the detail there, but as it wears on the sides, it gets sharper, you know, and anyway, at some point you got to throw them out, but that's kind of my, my don't waste upbringing coming through, I guess, like, you know, but I think we do better when we go ahead and throw out worn picks. All right, Paulo, how are you doing and what's on your mind?
Okay. First, I'm totally agree with what you said before, that it's always good to go back to the basics, and there are always more deeper and deeper level that you can explore going back to the basics.
Yeah.
So personally, today I've seen your last video on solo number 6, and personally, it's far beyond my technical skills. So to me, it's not basic. That one is even advanced. So the reason I am at this tier is that I'm very interested in the didactical and in the teaching approach you have. It's not just because I am at an high level, because I'm not. So I totally agree with going all in.
Paulo, what level, what would you say is kind of a challenge for you, though, that you want to, that would be breaking new ground? And what would be something that would be like your base that you're really comfortable with in terms of the core rhythm guitar or lead guitar methods? Where do you fall in that?
I can say it's something that you keep on repeating all the time you make a video review. It is the getting locked with the rhythm and really feeling what is going on more than thinking about it. Yeah.
Right.
I think that is my bigger limit at the moment, because I know it takes a while to get really into something.
Yeah, Kevin had just recorded, well, I guess you recorded it a while ago, but I just did the the review of his recording of that song 3 in rhythm guitar, which is very much, you know, kind of just basic upbeat 8th note groove, but to play it tight, to get in with that groove, it's really a matter of feeling that. How are you doing with material like that?
And sometimes I'm doing fine, sometimes I'm not.
Okay.
The point is, I think it's much a matter of attitude.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as in everything you practice, I mean, doesn't matter, it's playing guitar or the martial art or whatever,
Right.
is breaking the technique level and getting into the attitude level.
You're
you
totally right.
When you feel you are there.
Yeah, where you hold your mental attention is really critical. And the same, when you're talking about martial arts, of course, there's a lot of the same thing, because we're talking about a technique. You want to master the technique, but at the same time, where your mind goes is so critically important, because on the one hand, you need to care about it to be able to understand what the goal is and what it should look and feel like. And yet on the other hand, you don't want to like the question every moment, oh, was that on time? Or should, it was a little late, I should push it forward. You can't really manipulate it consciously, but you need that part of your brain, that conscious awareness, to recognize so that you can self-correct. But you want to do it without judging specifics, because you use that to put yourself in the right frame of mind so that you can feel it. Because playing guitar, it's kinesthetic, it's a feeling and a physical thing, and rhythm is physical motion. So it's more like martial arts, or more like dance, like, because dance, of course, is movement which is timed, and that's what we're doing. Our movements are timed, and I don't know, that's a really interesting thing to me, what you're getting at, which is watching yourself play to be able to guide your own attention in a way to get the results you want. And that's, I mean, I can point to it and talk about it, but of course, it's a different thing, to do it. And some people, will latch on to that more intuitively than others. So the fact that you're seeing it tells me you're on the right track. So that's good. I just want to go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to, I guess what I want to do is I want to encourage you to continue to dwell in that area as you play, and understand the spread of, sometimes you want to do that, and then sometimes it's okay to kind of get lost in I'm doing an exercise, I'm trying to break new ground, I'm trying to refine my technique. But the problem with trying to do too much of that is that it actually puts stress in your playing. It makes playing a struggle. And that's, again, the opposite of what we really want. You want playing should be free and easy, and mastery is effortless. So you don't want struggle in your playing. And how do you manage these two opposites in life? You know what I mean? And integrate them. And that, of course, is the challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but I think after all, the process is the final target to me. I mean, like I say, when you're on a journey, it's not your final destination. It's not the journey. It's not the final target. The final target is the journey. So
right.
in
Yes.
playing, I think as well.
Yeah, totally.
The learning process, it is the target to me.
Right. We have to reevaluate our goals in terms of direction and process. In other words, if you know that you're taking the right actions to move you in the direction you want, guitar or life or anything, that is success. And as we have this tendency, I think it's kind of the Western mindset of, discrete things like, okay, I want to achieve this, and we're outcome oriented. And I can't be happy with my guitar playing until I achieve this. And people will ask me things like, when can I be considered a good guitar player? I'm like, well, now you're capable of you're capable of doing what you're doing. When you reach the point that you have decided is your goal, you're going to have new goals. It's an unending process. And if you're enjoying the process, you're succeeding. And if you're seeing progress, you're succeeding. So yeah, my whole point of it now is all back to your inspiration and your direction. Totally. And that's hard to get, because I was very much trained to be outcome oriented, so our early experiences with, parents and our school system, you need to score high on the test. You need to get that job, and there are times where those things can matter, but in the long range, it's more about process. And if we manage our attitudes about process, then you'll get there to wherever it is you want to be, and you'll enjoy it. And that's even more important. Cool. Ade,
Yep, I agree.
what what are you thinking about these days?
A lot of stuff.
Like your shirt.
I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was the first concert I went to. It was 1970
Oh, really?
something, 77, I think. Yeah, very first rock
Yeah.
concert I went to was Kiss. Quite a show. Never saw anything quite like that.
Crazy.
Okay,
I bet.
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No worries. Okay, so what I'm doing is this, like I think I've told you that I love so many different genres of music.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm just focusing on one specific sound. I'm just kind of just working everything and just kind of seeing what comes out of it. So it's the battle and balance of doing enough of each. So like for instance, like I play slide, and the blues and all that type of stuff. So it's just kind of just taking everything that I'm doing with that, but then also meshing it in with the things like for instance like the metal lead and all that type of stuff, and bringing all those things together, and it comes out in just like for instance this technique. So that's all well and good. I think a lot of the questions that I do have in terms of just what sounds good and chords and all these different things are really in fretboard mastery for the most part. A lot of the questions that I have in terms of voice leading and all those kind of things.
Okay.
The one question, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
But
yeah,
actually, Kevin kind of touched on it. But in terms of gear, I would love for you to maybe, if you could do, I don't know, a video from your perspective on like actual gear in terms of like the pedals,
Okay.
Tone and volume with amps.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like what I've been doing now is that I have my volume all the way up on the amp, but like my volume's all the way down in the guitar.
Okay.
Like down to like 1 or 2, but my tone knobs are all the way up to 10. So I guess it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on just the dynamic between those things, but then also pedals and setups and all that type of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it's a complex topic because there are so many options, and it depends on what you're doing, and what I'm generally doing is recording, and there's ease and flexibility versus, what's ideal. Yeah, I can see going through that. I wanted to mention the first thing you were talking about, this wide variety of styles, a lot of things that you're interested in. I also had that as well. On the one hand, I kind of was drawn to and specialized in the more aggressive, more energy kind of playing. So, the heavier stuff. When I was coming up, and so I kind of specialized in that, but at the same time, it's also broadened out, and I like a lot of different things. People used to ask me, 20, 30 years ago, well, what do you like? What do you listen to? And I listen to everything. And my view of music was never like, oh, I like this style. It was more like, I like, if something's well done and it strikes me as inspired and creative, if it's a good song, if it's, whatever it is, I'm probably going to like it. So I couldn't say I like this artist and not that artist, because I like, this song by that artist, not that one. That's always been kind of my approach to it. And I came to see also that as you have a wider variety of influences, it seems to take a little longer to bring it into your core and make your artistic voice come through. Ultimately, it can happen though, where you sort of bring it all together and whatever you play is you. And even though you're playing it in different styles to some degree, but the more varied your style, your interests are, I think the longer it takes to kind of roll all that together into one thing. So it's cool though, what you're talking about is kind of where my mind was for so long, which was I just wanted to explore these different sounds and different styles and see what would happen when, you know what I mean, I pull these things together. And I still find that interesting, you know, to cross the genres and do stuff like that. That's how I think you break new ground, you know, and following your own artistic, you know, influences and just seeing what happens. So anyway, I'm totally with you on that, and I think that that's, you know, something I totally understand and I think is awesome, and that's the right way to go, in my opinion. As far as sound and tone, because sometimes I'll do music and I'll produce as well, and you can't really separate where the guitar player in you and the tone of you as a player ends and the tone as a producer begins. I mean, you can, I guess, if you have an outside producer, because then you hand off the tone to him and he makes that tone work with all the other tones. But a lot of the things that I find important in a tone, you know, I could do a video on that and talk about what I listen for and then what I try to do, like how I try to incorporate that tone, you know, in the song. That really ideally was I had intended to be in the next level 7, but I don't have anyone in level 7, so I think I'll go ahead and just do that here then. And so it's probably a series of videos, because there's a lot there. There's a lot of differentiation. I will also say this: I just bought a Fractal Audio Active X3. There's a waiting list. I actually found one on eBay and just scored it. I see, Kevin, you've got a Kemper up there. I was debating between the two, and I ended up choosing the Fractal Audio because it seemed to have a little bit more tweakability in terms of what you can do with the thing. And because when I produce, I'm often finding, oh, I just wish I could get a little more edge or a little more brightness out of it, because tone, it'll sound great by itself. You know, you play in a room by itself, it can sound great, but then once you put it in the context of a particular song and a particular groove with other instruments and tones, you know, you might need to adjust it more. And so I thought that being able to do that would probably be something that I might like to do. And that's kind of the reason I went with Fractal Audio. I've been using this Vox pedal board. As far as modeling amps, you know, I've been using it for a long time. It's pretty good, and often it works, but there are plenty of times with this thing where I reach its limit and I'm like, I wish I could get more of this or that out of it, and you can't. And then it just feels like it's not quite working. And then I'm struggling with EQ and compression to kind of make up for its not ability to do what I want it to do, you know. So that was kind of the big reason too that I went ahead and jumped to the next level up. And if you guys don't know, the Kemper and Fractal Audio are pretty much the two digital, you know, profiling modeling amps that are head and shoulders above everything else. Like my experience with modeling amps all the way back to Line 6 and then Vox, which I thought was an improvement over the Line 6. And of course, they're improving all the time a little bit. But my experience with them was that they were never as good as the real amp, because I'd mic the real amp up and I'd use the patch, and the patch just was not as present, not as clear, not as direct and upfront. And that matters when you're playing live, or when you get into a situation, where you're recording in a dense mix, because, high energy music has gain, a lot of gain. And when you have a lot of gain in a sound, that's a big tone and it fills up the space, so it becomes very competitive in trying to produce, high energy music, rock, metal. The guitar tone really takes up a lot of space. So anyway, yeah, I'll add that to the list. I made a list here. It's my, I don't know if you can see it. It's washing out in the video, but I finally laid out all the tiers and all the videos I've done and all the videos I want to do, and try to fit them in and choose the order, but I will add that. All right, we got 15 minutes here, so let's go back through. If there's any follow-ups, we'll try to have a little shorter. I'll try to stay a little more concise in my answers. As you've probably noticed, I don't do that. I talk probably too much when we start getting into the details. But let's go back to Kevin. Any other thoughts, anything you want to talk about?
Well, on that, I actually have that same problem with talking a lot. So I've been this is a practice for me too, to actually just try and keep it contained. Let's see. Yeah, on the Fractal versus Kemper, I personally, yeah, because they're basically two different styles. I picked the Kemper because I wanted plug and play so that I can work on my playing skills. Then I can buy, profiles, and I found quite, there are a few out there that, they've got really good profiles that sound good in the room, that sound good in the mix and all that, but they're not tweakable to the same degree, or to, the Axe Effects was a tweakers thing. And I was like, well, okay, am I wanting to be Linux, or do I want to be, a Mac user for the sound?
Right.
And I chose the Mac
Right.
side of it. So as far as
you got to know
goes,
yourself,
but yeah, they're both top.
What your strengths and weaknesses are, and what your interests are, to know what's going to match your work style. So yeah, that's
right.
Very true.
Yeah, so given that makes total sense for you with, your production skills and all and everything. You want to tweak this, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, Axe would actually be much better. Let's see. Actually, no, you already covered the one, because I didn't listen to it yet, but Solo 6, I was going to ask you to do a non-tremolo version, and you did. From the description, I need to watch that. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Actually,
Cool. Paulo?
we covered everything.
Very good.
Yep. Just some curiosity is if there are any of the nowadays guitar player that you find still interesting for you, and you are somehow excited about, and not just the guitar heroes of the 80s that we all loved, but someone of the most recent one, and that you think is you like somehow, and you say, when you listen to, say, okay, and this is something that interesting.
Well,
technical skill is
yeah.
good.
I don't listen a whole lot because I'm creating a lot, so I'm either working on videos for this book video, which is all original music, or I'm working on Patreon videos, or I'm working on my own production. And so I'm not really listening much. However, I do have a lot of contact with a lot of players that will send me stuff, and there are a lot of players that will reach out to me on Facebook and say, hey, can you check this out? And I'll listen, while I'm doing email and stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'm generally listening to, when it's not my stuff. And there are a lot of really exceptional players, you know, that I like listening to. And I don't, you know, I don't know necessarily names like off the top of my head, but it's not like I'm necessarily listening to, you know, albums. You know, a couple of years ago, Guthrie Govan came across my radar, and very, very good control, precision in his playing, and interesting note choices. I like that. I like note choices that seem, you know, musically saturated, like they're well placed and they create musical impact. And so, you know, I liked hearing some of his stuff. Sometimes I like listening to a player that, you know, they've mastered, you know, a certain thing, and maybe it's not super groundbreaking, but it's still good. You know, it's just nice to hear anything that feels like it knows what it is, and it's moving in a musical direction to take me with it to where it's going. So, you know, that's what I like to hear. And that's really what I try to do myself, you know, with stuff is try to allow it to take me, you know, where I think the music wants it to go. There's so many players though in this day that have the technical skills. You know, the question becomes, do you like their energy? Do you like their tone? I mean, tone is, you know, really critically important in the delivery. It's that interplay between technique and tone, and then the top it off, yeah, the creativity to take it somewhere that actually says something, you know, musically. So I can't really give you any specific names, but that's kind of what I like.
Oh,
That's what I listen for.
okay.
Okay. Ade, any wrap up thoughts?
Yeah. One thing I guess that's not, I guess that you don't really see it talked about often, and again, I'd love to get your take and perspective. I don't know, maybe this could be a video idea as well, is performance. So like for instance, like watching some of your videos, you're able to still keep your acts at a very comfortable level, but you're still able to play those runs even when they're at that place on your body, if you get what I mean.
Okay.
So like,
yeah,
you're not holding it like yeah,
like a fusion player up here. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
right, but that's what I'm saying. You have at least from what I see, you have the capability to be that, but you're still able to do that, at least to me, from that sort of comfortable state. You're still able to play your three notes, and you're still able to really adjust and all that. So and still play with grooves. So I'd be curious to hear your perspective on the performance dynamic, but also like maneuverability and technicality with it when you're able doing all of that.
Yeah.
Just to I mean, I have ideas, but just to hear your take.
Yeah. I like having the guitar low enough that it feels natural and comfortable. It feels kind of uptight if I hold it too high, and I feel like it's too intellectual or something. It's more when it's out enough that like if I'm performing something with energy, you know, it's big motions. I want to hit a chord, and I want it to be expressive and expansive. And then when the guitar is low, it feels a little more expansive. And I guess I was cut from the mold of, you know, the 80s players, you know, Van Halen. Now, he didn't hold his guitar super low, but neither was it super high. But Randy Rhoads and, you know, the other Ozzy players and, you know, Paul Gilbert and so forth, they're kind of that mid-range point where it's still loose enough to be rock and roll, and yet also technical enough, to be interesting. And so, that's kind of where I try to balance those two things, really, the feel of it, and also, to me, music, it's always been here. It's the emotional intensity of it, which is like why I like, the faster lines, and I like the energetic phrases, and the a lot of times the bends that are tense, like I go for tension notes. And then I noticed the other day I was talking to somebody about the fact that I do unconsciously, I slide in and out of things. I will put extra noises in, and I don't even necessarily think about those, because to me, I feel a level of a dynamic, an energy level behind the notes. As I hear in my mind what I'm playing, I feel like I'm pushing the energy level up, and playing without those things would feel like a huge drop down in energy level. So the seamlessness, wanting to connect things together, that really comes from that an awareness energy. And it's the same awareness that when you write a song, you'll feel the rise, and the strength of your chorus, and then you'll feel it back off a little bit. And it might be really subtle, and it might not be a dynamic issue. It might just be because of the way the way you wrote the melody, or it might be the way the motifs of the phrasing create more energy or relax the energy. But I'm a very energy attuned player, I guess, is what I'd say. And so I'm sure you hear that too in music. I just did, I recorded, I haven't put it up yet. I just recorded solo 7, and noticed that there's a lot of, on the one hand, there's the precision of being able to hit the stuff right on time, but there's also the filling of all the space. So anyway, I guess that was why it came up in conversation, because I was doing stuff that I was like, wait a minute, how do I explain this? But anyway, does that kind of address your question, or is that did I leave something out, not hit it right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess hearing the way you look at it, I guess I was more so thinking about it from a visual standpoint. If you get what I mean, meaning like.
Yeah, I understand. I would say this about the visual aspect. I never really think much about that. I know that that's a component of it, it's an important component of it, because if you're trying to establish a career, write as a songwriter, as a recording artist, and putting your vision out, and you're performing, what you're doing visually, what you choose to wear, how you choose to look. Music is a social phenomenon, and it's funny how the different genres are named based on non-musical things. Well, that's because it is a social phenomenon. So, country music used to be one thing. Now modern country music is rock with with a violin, or a twang in the vocal delivery, and driving trucks and wearing cowboy hats. You know what I mean? You do that, and now it's country, and that the social encapsulation of that attitude and mindset is really the thing. That's why, for example, back in the 90s, grunge, Nirvana came out, and they were kind of the leader of that grunge thing. And it was a musical thing, but it was an attitude thing, more of, we're not gonna claim to be great. We're inept. This is the best we can do, but we still, this is our life experience, and that's what we're going to put out, and it doesn't fit in line with the glam stuff that came before. And so they called it different. They called it grunge, and they called it alternative. And then guess what? Another band, Alice in Chains, came out about the same time in the same area, and they were in the same thing. Well, guess what? Alice in Chains wasn't grunge, really. I mean, listen to the tones, listen to the singing. They were metal. They were just wearing flannel shirts too, you know? So it is interesting to hear how all that comes in. And so what I would encourage people to do is, yeah, learn your music, learn your skills, but wear your guitar, play the guitar that fits the image you want to project, wear it at the level that fits the feel of what you want to produce, and roll that together and make that work. And don't deny any aspect of it, including the performance, the visual. Now, that being said, I know what I am, and I, for some reason, just don't do it. I just am what I am, and because I keep thinking I'm just the musician. I'm more of a musician than a performer. Not that I can't perform, but that's where my head is, and I accept that, the pluses and minuses that come with it. All right, guys, it's about 11 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap it up here, and I will try to get this Q&A back up a little quicker, and got a lot more stuff going up this week. So thank you, Ade, for the thoughts about tone, and I'll add that to my list. I don't know if I'll get to it this week, but I will get to it. So awesome. All right, guys, take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay.
Bye. Bye now.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.